everyone, it's Margaret Manning here with 60 and Me. This is the place where women who are aging beautifully come to be inspired. And we're going to be inspired today by Ora Nadrich. Ora is the founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking. She is a meditation teacher, a mindfulness meditation teacher, and also a life coach. She's the author of a book called Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity. And I'm so happy to have you here, Ora. We've got a community of women who have got so many questions about this issue of authenticity. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Margaret, for having me.
You know, I bought a t-shirt the other day, or other week, I should say, and on it said, don't worry about being authentic, don't worry about being unique, just be authentic. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really powerful way to approach what authenticity is. But how do you describe it? What is authenticity?
Authenticity to me is, obviously there's the definitions of authenticity, genuine, real. And how do we apply that to ourselves? Are we being real? Are we being genuine? Are we being true to who we really are? We live our lives sometimes taking on different identities, roles, personas, even something like people pleasing. We're really compromising the authentic self, who we really are. And it's important to, get connected to who you are, especially, about this show. As one gets older, I feel you've earned the right to be your most real, glorious, fabulous self.
Yeah. Well, no, that's why I love that t-shirt, because everybody now is trying to be unique. Everyone's trying to be different and stand out as the unique individual. But that, in a way, is, like you said, just playing into the stereotypes of what's popular, the A-type personality, the introverted people who are maybe more authentic and more connected to their real self are not rewarded in our society. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think that, because we are, we live amongst billions of human beings on this planet, we have a tendency to compare ourselves to others.
Exactly.
We're isolated, we're not living on a mountaintop somewhere. We're in society, we're coexisting, and I have a chapter on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very much at the effect of a lot of the external things that as we talked about earlier, that really affect our thoughts, and the next thing we're not really standing up for ourselves. We're not advocating for ourselves. So I want to also add to that I wrote this recent article, which I happen to really like the title, Act Your Authentic Self, Not Your Age.
Yes.
Because we're so, again, attached to a number, and authenticity, acting who you really are, to me, transcends a number.
Yeah.
You're just being true to yourself, whatever that is for you. The age doesn't need to define you. Your authentic self.
Right.
Authentic self, really, that's what I want to have express Aura. When I start to really think of a number, I'm this number, so therefore I should act a certain way, then that really dictates who we are. And I don't feel that that's what should dictate who we are. Who we are should be dictated by what we feel inside our being, our heart, our soul, our spirit.
Yeah. So how does that play, Aura, in the real world? In a world where there is certain behavior that's rewarded and certain behavior that's frowned upon. So, for example, well, maybe it doesn't matter. I was going to give you an example of fashion and say a lot of older women just say, forget it. I'm just going to wear what I like. I'm going to wear the, tennis shoes with the dresses. I don't really care. But yet, if you do that in Los Angeles, for example, or maybe not, I don't know, there's some judgment about you. There's some categorization of your authentic self.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I have a very specific story to that. For me personally, I wrote an article also for the Huffington Post many years ago called Not My Daughter's Jeans.
Okay.
Basically, Not My Daughter's Blue Jeans. And I found myself, I was at a sushi bar, and I had a scratch on my back, and I reached behind me to scratch my back, and I realized that you could practically see the crack of my behind.
Yeah.
And I was kind of horrified.
Oh my God, I look like that.
Truth be told, I was quite a little bit like, oh dear. Because, you sit down and sometimes your pants go low. And I had a real aha moment. I thought to myself, Ora, this was my own personal decision. It wasn't society telling me, listen, you're too old to wear those jeans. I made that decision for myself.
Right.
I said, it's a time. The time has come where I don't need to wear those kinds of jeans anymore that are so low that I myself was horrified to know that my backside was showing itself to whoever was sitting behind me. It just felt inappropriate to me. Now, we have to make those decisions, Margaret. I don't think society should say, hey, you woman of 40, 50, 60, 70 plus, you shouldn't wear this anymore. These are decisions that we must make for ourselves. I also think conversely that when we start to feel limited that we can't wear certain things because of the age that we are, I think you have to define that. That's a personal decision. So I came to that on my own. Do you know?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that demonstrates that for me is the focus as you get a little older to want to downsize, because you start looking at your closet, looking at your house, and you start saying, do those things that surround me, that stuff that is in my house, really reflect who I am?
Right.
At the time I accumulated them, I was trying to be an employee impressing a boss, or I was a wife trying to impress a husband. But now I'm not that anymore. So do you see that downsizing trend as a manifestation?
I happen to think that that's absolutely correct, and I'm doing it right now in my own home.
Yeah.
I'm downsizing. I'm going through my closets, like so much so that I realize how little we really need. Do you know?
So true.
It really is. And I've taken quite a liking to minimalism. I've really come to know that I don't really want a lot of stuff around me. It feels like noise. Now, that's, again, a personal decision. Some people love a lot of things around them, and that's their particular preference, and I get that. I also find that maybe it's a sign of age. I don't know. I really like to be comfortable in my body. Yeah. So things like wearing tight clothes, clothes that maybe you would wear when you're much younger. I don't really want to wear those clothes anymore. I want I want to feel like my body's breathing. And so comfort for me is key. Do you know?
So maybe how do you start with this? I mean, do you start by thinking of 3-5 words that define who you are, that you're, bohemian or creative or classical, and then start from that looking around your house and saying, does everything tune in with those 5 words? I mean, do you have any techniques?
I think that's a wonderful technique. I actually really think that's a wonderful tip to give people. I definitely think that my environment, I want it to reflect how I feel inside. And I am much more of a contemplative person. I like quiet time. I like mindfulness. I like meditation. I like contemplation. I love to read. I love to have soft music around me. Yeah. So I want my environment to be that. So ask yourself, the question of who am I, which, by the way, is one of the chapters in Live True. That's an incredible thing to ask oneself. It's a very profound question. Who am I? Who am I today? Who I am today is not who I was in my 20s. It wasn't who I was in my 30s. It wasn't who I was in my 40s. Whether it's an age, a time, a decade, a job that maybe when you were in the corporate world, you dressed a certain way. So to give yourself permission, if you will, and that's why I say women of a certain age have earned the right to wear who they are proudly and to express themselves proudly. If anything, I love to talk about the earning of wisdom, the earning of autonomy, the earning of individuality. Do you know? And that's the beauty of getting older, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think that tunes in really beautifully with the conversation that we had earlier about mindfulness, because if you are trying to take that step of simplifying your definition of who you are, surrounding yourself with items that can pull you to a center. Like, for example, instead of having 10 things on a table, having one beautiful bowl, so that you can go to that beautiful bowl and say, now that is me. That is like it's the right color, it's the right shape, and then just hold it or just look at it every now and again.
I agree. Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of, mindfulness does really, I think, support that minimalist point of view, because you suddenly are looking at something, there's this beautiful quote by Thoreau. It's not what you're looking at that matters, but what you see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite quotes, because suddenly you can have an object, and that one object gives you so much pleasure, and it's so beautiful, and you can share it with other people. And a lot of the times we cloud over, because we have so many things and so much busyness around us and so much chaos, be it material or otherwise, that having one object like that, not that you have to have one object on your coffee table, but I'm very attracted to that myself. Like I said, I'm in the middle of changing my home, and I'm going to actually pack up a lot of things. I have a lot of beautiful things around me, but sometimes less is more.
It's so funny. Today I was in a shop at Zara. We have a fashion shop here called Zara, and they have a big sale, and it was like 50% off everything. So I thought, well, okay, I'll give myself a budget, maybe $20. So if I see anything that I really love, I'll feel okay about getting it. So I went in there, and there were women just like stacking their arms with one dress after the other. And I was looking at each one, and I pulled up this one dress. I thought, those are really cool buttons. That's a really nice button. Put it back somewhere else. And that's a brilliant pink and orange together. I love that. And I walked out of the shop with nothing. But I had such a great time, just.
And
it was fun.
Margaret, that's a great exercise to really observe desire, and then take it into compulsivity.
I know. Yeah.
Sometimes have this knee-jerk reaction, and where mindfulness can really help with that is like, let me go into this store where there's temptation all around me,
right,
and be able to feel my impulse, like, oh, maybe I should get that, or oh, I want that, or oh, I'd love to get that, and be able to say, you know what, I don't need to have everything that I feast my eyes on.
Yeah, my authentic self doesn't need one more item. But tell me, there's one interesting thing. I read something in one of your books, and you made a comment that being authentic yourself is a great way of helping others to be authentic. Can you tell me a bit about that process, how that works?
I think that when people see somebody really being true to who they are, it's very attractive. And I found myself saying, friends, by the way, that I have a friend that one time was showing her vulnerability to me, and it was not easy for her. And I said to her, and this is back to what we said earlier, like, how can we help each other? And I said to her, I want you to know that you are really beautiful right now. Your vulnerability is actually really beautiful. And she was like, really? And I said, yeah, it's you're being real. You're being real, and real is authenticity. So when you see somebody who's unafraid to be real, that's why we admire people that are so comfortable in their own skin. And the reason why is because they are so self-accepting, and it's attractive. And we can look at them and say, wow, I'd like to emulate that. She or he is so comfortable in themselves, in their skin. They're so okay with themselves, And it is very, I find it attractive, in as much as we all have insecurities, we do. It's just part of the human condition. Yeah. When you see somebody who's just so assured, and I don't mean it in a cocky, arrogant way, I mean that they are really accepting. And one of the other definitions of mindfulness is being in the present moment with total awareness and non-judgment. Acceptance, acceptance is a big part of mindfulness. Acceptance is, I am accepting who I am in this moment, and I am enough. So I find it to be very attractive, and I know that's sometimes not easy for people to really accept about themselves, but it really is authenticity. When you are able to be real, you're setting the example of that, and I can tell you, people see it and they admire it and they want to be like that.
And it gives them courage, I think, to actually, Brene, I was thinking of Brene Brown as you were talking about being enough, because, Brene Brown talks about vulnerability and about feeling, that you're not good enough. And I think that people like that who are just like right out there, she is like, when she talks on her TED Talks, you can see she's just so totally like honest about her own fears, her own, hesitation and nervous and flaws, as you said, but it's something about them that makes you say, oh my God, I can do that. I don't have to be, especially older women. I'm not working for this person anymore. I'm not having to be a mom. I can be me.
We have to
scary though.
Well, I was going to say, we have to get used to feeling uncomfortable in our acceptance of who we are.
Yes.
We have to learn how to be aware of how uncomfortable we are. What brings to mind to me is a lot of the ways in which we stave off or we avoid being happy. Or we avoid, the thing about, we're more afraid of success than failure. These new habits of thinking, these new ways of having awareness of ourselves, I think about that a lot in life. What would we do if we suddenly weren't worrying all the time? I have a chapter on worrying, the something to worry about thoughts in my first book, Says Who. And I had a women's group for many, many years. And I had a woman say, Ora, I'm implementing the Says Who method. And I suddenly was aware of that, I don't know, an hour went by and I was like, oh my God, I didn't worry about anything. What's wrong?
I'm worried about not being worried. Yeah, that's crazy.
Worried about not worrying. We have to admit to ourselves how uncomfortable it is to love ourselves, to accept our own discomfort, and what would we do if we didn't have time to think negative thoughts, or we didn't throw ourselves under the bus, or we weren't constantly berating ourselves, or constantly telling ourselves we weren't enough. There are people that genuinely feel like, oh, I wouldn't know, what would I think? What would I do with myself if I couldn't worry? What would I do with myself if I wasn't self-critical? What would I do with myself if I, had to really love myself? There's a lot we need to really own about ourselves and how we've conditioned ourselves, whether it's part of the conditioning that was imposed upon us when we were younger, that this is a new way of living. And it's an existential question that I have had, in that, what would we do if life were different? What would we do if a lot more was working and we didn't have all of these problems that we become very attached to, comfortable with, and used to and expect? Yeah,
I agree. No, the reason as you're talking, I'm just so happy that there are people like you writing books like this and getting out there in the world and talking about the practical way to escape this, because there's a lot of women who are living alone who genuinely, that question of what would I do if is actually a real question for them, because they don't have friends, they don't have places to go, and actually trying to go out into the world as a 60-year-old woman and making a new friend is challenging. So,
but I want to say something to that, Margaret. I am seeing a lot of changes in women, and I have women, dear friends, that are in their 60s.
Yes, they're changing.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of changes in women, a lot, and it's quite extraordinary. A couple of things. I know women. It's very scary to think about changing out your friendships later on in life, because if you've had a group of women that you've gone through a lot of your life with, and you've changed and you're no longer the same person that you were. I know a woman in particular she said one day, I'm afraid I'm not my age, and she's almost 70. She said, I'm afraid I'm not going to have any, I'm going to have one or two friends because I've outgrown so many of my friends. This can be very frightening to people. The other side of that is making a new friend at any time in your life. Sometimes we have to take ourselves out of our comfort zone.
Right.
And let's say a woman that wants to change out some of her friendships, that can be a bit of a scary step to take, to leave behind what's familiar and go towards the unfamiliar, and maybe initiate a conversation with a woman. Maybe you go to a museum, or maybe you sign on to be a docent, or maybe you volunteer at the library, or you're in your knitting class, where you strike up a conversation with a woman that you've never talked to before.
Yeah.
It could end up being a new friend. Do you know?
Well, this is in fact goes right back in full circle to where we started about this whole question of, or at the beginning of our earlier conversations, about making new friends based on who your authentic self is. Like, once you know who you are, then you can join a meetup group. If you say, I really want painting, I've always wanted to create, so join a painting class. And start. And the other place I've absolutely seen a change is traveling. There are so many older women on the road, and so many, Facebook groups now that I'm part of, where you're hosting a sister, like where women are staying with other women. And it's just this big support group now for women who are out there manifesting their authentic
Absolutely.
selves.
And I that's a really great thing for women to know, that there's so many other people out there who want to do what you want to do. And we live in a time where you can really connect. There are these connect groups or these meetup groups or these Facebook groups, where you can suddenly connect with other women who have similar commonality and interest as you do. There are some people that are afraid to take that first step.
I agree. It's hard.
And all it takes is just one step, and maybe think of, well, how can I initiate something? Or maybe invite somebody over to my place for a cup of tea, and, whatever it might be for you, that we can change out our lives at any given time. And that's the beauty of this, that you're not alone, and more women. And I've encouraged that, by the way, I've encouraged women to take themselves places. I happen to I don't have a problem doing things alone, and I'm married and I have children. I don't have a problem going into a restaurant by myself. My schedule is such that sometimes I have to go grab a bite to eat, and I'll go down to a local restaurant in my neighborhood. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting at a sushi restaurant, I'm talking to another woman at the sushi bar.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're just chatting away.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of that. I say, says who's judging you because you've decided to go somewhere alone by yourself.
Totally. I'm a train traveler. And you meet the strangest and wonderful people.
I love, by the way, we've been a big train family.
That's cool.
Talk about the calming effect of being on a train.
Yeah.
They are so meditative.
They are. And also, you don't have to make friends your own age. I've made so many friends with younger people, and they are just so interested in what we've done as older women. They want to hear your stories. You'd be surprised. I'm sure you agree with that.
Completely. And that's the beauty of initiating conversations, the art of discourse, being somewhere where you can find yourself talking to someone who is not in your demographic and really enjoying it. Do you know that you can talk to anybody of any age? That's the beauty. We are travelers here on this planet. And the more we utilize this amazing earth that we're on, and be imaginative and go towards our fears. I just wrote a little blurb on somebody's site, and I said, go towards those fears.
Right.
That's for me, when I'm feeling something in my body that's afraid, I know that I'm on the precipice of pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I'm very connected to the mind-body connection. And, take yourself into a situation that might be a little awkward and uncomfortable for you. Being alone is hard for a lot of people, but the next thing you know, you put yourself out there, a train ride, going to a restaurant, going to a museum. You'll before you know it, you're talking to somebody.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think it was Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, said something like, if you're feeling fear, you're moving towards the truth.
Absolutely.
I love that quote. So,
I think for me, it's my personal barometer. Like, I know that it's like, and I also have something in Live True called taking that spiritual pulse. Take your spiritual pulse. What I mean by that specifically, yes, we take our pulse. We can feel if we're alive, if we're breathing. Taking your spiritual pulse is checking within. What's going on in there? What's my heart telling me?
Yeah.
Listen to your heart. Spend some time with, getting familiar and acquainted with the deeper places within. It's a great place to journey to. When you talk about Margaret being on the train, that image of like sitting somewhere quietly, even if you want to close your eyes for a little bit and have a little sweet meditation, you want to read a book, you find yourself in conversation. What a lovely time.
Yeah. It's amazing. We have so much opportunity, and I'm so inspired by what you've been doing, Ora. I'm so happy that we had a chance to talk. I hope that people do go check out your website, oranadrich.com, and also we'll put all the information in the video and articles. And I hope we have another chance to chat. We've got lots of questions, I'm sure, that will come from these conversations, and would love to stay in touch. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Our Patreon supporters help us to make a bigger difference in the lives of women over 60 all around the world. They get exclusive videos, live video shows, discounts, and much more. So please look for the link on this page. It is somewhere down here, up there. And join our tribe of women in our 60andMe community who are actually making a big difference in the world, challenging aging stereotypes. So thank you so much for your support.